But I would say that's the number one thing is just when you're out taking a period of time and using the tools, books, meditation. A lot of it was just talking to family, but also looking at the quality of my relationships from the time in the military to the time out of the military. And if I wanted them to be different, I needed different patterns, different habits, and starting to set those.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Military Retirement Podcast. We're here with Mike McDonald, CVO of Truvana. He's reached out and graciously given us a lot of his time, and I think we're going to have some good conversation points out of this. Pay attention if you're transitioning out, you're trying to start a business, if you're transitioning out and you're looking for purpose in your life. I think we're going to cover a lot of things like that. So with all that, welcome to the show, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time out, man. So I just want to start off with a question about where kind of you grew up and like what was the catalyst that allowed you to raise your right hand and join the military.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Ohio. It was a very, very, very small town. It's called Zanesville. We're kind of famous for that one guy like 10 years ago who let all those zoo animals out. I don't know if you remember that story, but he had like lions, tigers, and bears.
Oh my!
Yeah, yeah. Oh my is right, and it gets much worse. He was dying, and he ended his own life, committed suicide, and when he did, he let like a bunch of lions and tigers and bears out in my hometown. There's like 50,000 people. So it was a whole situation. So that put Zanesville on the map, and that's where I'm from. It's pretty much a normal Tuesday. But yeah, I grew up there. My mom was an educator. She uh, is a college professor, teaches communications. My dad is a mental health CEO of an organization called Allwell. And I was going to follow in his footsteps. And I did pre-med in college, but didn't really see following through with that as making the impact that I wanted to. Right, American healthcare is not a great system to make change in. So I just decided to look at becoming a SEAL. I started to do the train up for that, and in that process, was training with some SEALs and some Special Forces guys, some Green Berets. And in listening to the difference between those two mission sets, I really fell in love with the Deo Presso Liber, to liberate the oppressed Special Forces mission. Really resonated with me, really making an impactful difference in the lives of other people who have a difficult time advocating for themselves. So decided to enlist under what's called the 18 X-ray program. Really cool program that allows you to go from college to try out for Special Forces. So tried out, made it, and the rest is kind of history.
That's awesome. And when you came in, did it meet the expectation that you had, or were there some surprises along the way when you first joined up and started down that path?
Yeah, I think that it's mostly surprises all the way around, right? You surprise yourself, and the military will surprise you. Working in the government or any sort of government work will surprise you. People are just unpredictable in general. So it's not really a predictable job. Hard to say if anything is, but definitely not the military, definitely not special operations. So I would say that, you sign up and you think it's going to go one way. If you haven't signed up and you're listening to this and you're thinking about it, just go into it with an open mind. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. The biggest thing you can do to set yourself up for success is just take it as it comes and make sure that you process it afterwards, right? Because all the change has an impact on your day-to-day life. Can increase the amount of stress that you go through. But yeah, it's definitely not what I expected. I expected it to be hard. I expected it to be a challenge. and I would say that it definitely met that expectation, but um, it's a really unique experience, and it's different for everybody. People you think will go through something with no problems end up being the people to quit day one or day two, and people that you don't expect would ever make it all the way through with amazing performance. So it's just full of surprises. People will surprise you. The military is an awesome organization with the good and the bad, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely has good days and bad days, and
Mm-hmm.
even after military service, it's
Yeah, of
the
course.
same, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't expect it to get any glaringly better once you get out of the military and you're like
Mm-hmm.
free from the shackles of the uniform and all
Yeah.
that happy
Yeah.
stuff. Like it's
And I say it like anything else, right? Where it isn't necessarily good or bad. It just is, right? It's
right.
kind of how you take it, how you process it, and it's so important. Um, Whether you're looking at getting in, whether you're still in, or whether you're transitioning out or out already, to you know leave your assumptions about what should happen or what you expect, leave those at the door. Just bring your best self every day, and try to go and just take it as it comes. There's ups and downs. The good days don't last, the bad days don't last, but on average, your reaction to those good days and bad days is the only thing you can control. So yeah, it's something that we all continue to work on, for sure.
Yeah, along those lines, I want to ask you if there was any big failure moments or big, really bad days that happened that then turned into um, unexpected success on the back end. Like something happened that was not good or bad, but it just happened. It made the day not great. And then that kind of setback later on down the line, you realize, oh wow, this really set me in a different path that kind of set me in a good way at the end of it,
Hmm.
just because of that moment. Is anything like that that you experienced?
Yeah, I think generally, if zooming out, looking at my entire career, when I got in, um, I really I didn't really have any expectations other than I wanted to make it through and was prepared to do whatever it took to get that done, right? To win that long tab and that green beret. Um, yeah, it was going to be do that or die trying. And so my expectation, I think, of myself when I finished the qualification course, about 2 years long, was that I was going to be a special forces guy for my entire career. The entire um, you know 20 years. But last year or the year before last year, had some combat related injuries and decided to get those checked out, and ended up doing a medical retirement board. And so when I found out that I was qualified to medically retire, uh, it is it changes the trajectory of your plan. Right, my plan was to do my time on a team, go teach new Green Berets at a specialty school out in uh, Washington, and then come back and take a team as a team sergeant, and finish out the rest of my career as a team sergeant and sergeant major. But um, with the retirement, it changes, right? So you have to process that. And at the time, having a lot of you know combat related injuries and some things that caused me to be 100% disabled. Um, you look at that as potentially a con, right? But I had a really supportive family, really supportive friends, and talked through the whole process. And like I'm saying, really took the time to process that, or tried to take the time to process it. It takes more time than a week or a month or a year. But it helped me realize that this is a chapter, and I'm closing that chapter of being a special operator. And what can I do next? Right? What can I do next that's fulfilling, that's challenging, that allows me to have the same impact that I wanted to have, and was the reason that I, like you said, raised my right hand and took that oath and decided to join in the first place, right? To do more good in the world. How can I do that? And so it ended up pivoting me into starting Truvana, and running that for a year, and then working with my co-founder and then other partners that we have in the company now to really create this opportunity to make service member life better, create new jobs, and do the same mission, right? And arguably at a higher level than I had the opportunity to do, or would have had the opportunity to do, even had I continued my progression in special forces. So to your point, nothing is the end as long as um, you continue to move forward. It's really important to process what you feel like you lost, or the changes you feel like have been made or that you've made, and just continue to move forward in a positive direction. That's all you can do. But it can be a fantastic, you know, change, and it might not feel like that when you start, but you can get there. Just got to keep working through it.
Yeah, it's always hindsight is always 2020, right? So
Yeah.
you're never really going to see the change until months, years, decades later. Same with the military. Like if you serve for 10, 20, 30 years, you don't see how you've changed from the snot-nosed private to what develop into as a senior NCO or an officer, a warrant officer later on down in your career.
Right.
And then you look back and you're like, wow, I was a jerk back then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I just try to be less of a jerk each day. That's my goal. Yeah, for sure.
I do the same. Trust me.
Yeah. We're work in progress, man.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask you about, so just right into it. I wanted to ask, like, did you get a chance to prepare in advance? I know you said you took about a year and a half from work to be able to get ready for the transition, but did you take any time before that, like mentally, to prepare for the transition, or was it just kind of like this thing happened and then you had to start going down the path of transitioning out, and you didn't really get time to mentally prepare, like backtrack 3-5 years or something like that?
Yeah, I would say that I had the time. I didn't use the time to process it. Right. It wasn't. I I was so focused on what to do next. Right. The day that I transitioned out, when I retired last year in November, I wanted to make sure that I was transitioning into the next thing, um, and it was operating at a high level by the time I transitioned out of the military. I think I was so focused on um, mission success, and the mission being the success of the company as I pivoted out, that I didn't focus on processing the last 5 years, 10 years of my career. And it wasn't really until this year when I was out, um, that I've like started to kind of to process it. And as anniversaries of, friends that I've lost, or um, really impactful missions or operations that I went on, kind of come and go. It's the first year, the first anniversary of me being out of service for those times or those milestones in my career. And so it really forces you to look back and gives you some perspective about healing and processing. But I would say that it's critical, if you can, to take that time to process in that year that you transition out. But for me, it just took longer than I assumed it would during that time. Does that make sense? It took me about a year to get to a spot where I could actually process it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I
Mm-hmm.
want to ask you as a follow-on question, was there any tips, tactics, books, methodologies that you might have uh, enacted or enabled in order to help you along that process? Like maybe you started to realize what was going on, and you said, okay, maybe I need to look towards meditation, or then maybe I need to go play pickleball, or like whatever it happens to be, to try to figure it out?
Yeah, I would say that um, that time is what it was for me, and kind of looking at uh, my relationships, and kind of comparing the, when you're in special operations. I think we got like a 90 plus divorce rate, 90% plus divorce rate in special operations. It's hard on relationships. It's tough on you personally, right? There were years where I deployed 3 times, back to back to back, 2 month or 3 month trips. Um, and it puts a lot of strain on you personally and on your relationship, right? And you wonder, is that uh, your default as a person, or is it the military requirements on you putting the strain on your relationship or relationships, right? Both personally, professionally, the strain on yourself, stressors on yourself. So once I was out, right, and I'd been out for a few months, and those tendencies or the pressure on my relationships um, were still present post military, it was really just taking a look at uh, the difference between being in a different job but having some of those same stressors, right? So it's not the military that causes you to do certain behaviors. You'll do those behaviors in the military or not in the military. So looking at, and when I say those behaviors, I just mean there were, I can maybe pick 1 or 2 times where I didn't, volunteer for a mission or a school or some additional operation. Um, I tend to stay busy. I tend to push hard, and that kind of followed me. But that's who I am, right? That's not something that the military did to me. That's kind of who I am. So I would say that in transitioning out, you really kind of got to tease apart the differences between your core kind of character traits and the environment that your character is represented in, right? And if you don't want to continue those habits, you really kind of have to change your environment for a period, right? To change some of those patterns so that you don't um, exasperate those parts of your behavior in your post-military life, right? So the everything is my choice now, right? Work that I do or hours that I work, especially as the founder and the CEO of the company, the pace of the company is largely driven at the pace that I go. So I try to make sure that that's a healthy pace for both my employees and my team members and myself. Um, you know, and that's really important. Um, but I would say that's the number one thing is just when you're out taking a period of time and using the tools, books, meditation. A lot of it was just talking to family, but also looking at the quality of my relationships from the time in the military to the time out of the military. And if I wanted them to be different, I needed different patterns, different habits, and starting to set those.
Yeah, forgive me for going deep, deep, deep down this rabbit hole, but
That's
this
okay,
is
man. Yeah.
something it's really interesting to me, and hopefully it's interesting to those out there listening or watching, because I think it touches on a lot of things that we don't actually get to talk about a lot. And it's interesting that your father is kind of in that career field of mental
Mm,
health,
yeah.
practitioner of this kind of stuff. So I'm guessing, I would assume, and assume is a bad word to use, but I would assume it maybe trickled down from growing up with a father who does this kind of thing. Um, I'm curious to know two things actually. One is your relationships that you had in the military and then outside of the military. Let's just call it the five people you spend the most time with. Were there any of those relationships where you had to, because of you changing your behavior or trying to influence your behavior in a different direction, any of those relationships you had to cut off, any of those relationships that got stronger, and what did that kind of look like?
Yeah. So I would say for me, it was kind of the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I tended to focus on my accomplishments as success, and that sort of forced me, however close or distant the relationship, to kind of compartmentalize it, or to always deprioritize it at the expense of what I was doing or what I needed to accomplish, whatever mission I was doing or success, right? Um, it allowed me to do that, to be successful in working, months on end for 18, 20-hour days, depending on what we had going on. But I would say it was the opposite, focusing on bringing those relationships closer, spending more time with quality people. I've always been fortunate to have kind of like quality friends, quality connections, and build relationships with healthy, quality people, and kind of keeping that network of people as healthy as I can. So the difference between, I guess, me and in this context is that network was healthy. My attachment to it was not necessarily healthy, right? So what I focused on and am focusing on and getting better at is being closer to and communicating more clearly, more openly, more honestly with that network of healthy connections and people. And I think that's critical to do, um, especially for high performers who tend to sacrifice endlessly in order to achieve things. It's really critical to, um, you know, keep that close network. A mentor of mine said it best. I think he said that one of his goals in life was to abandon the costly goal of self sufficiency, right? And so everybody who's high performing looks at relationships as a liability from time to time, right? We look at relationships as something that can slow us down, somebody else's needs on us being something that can stop us from accomplishing our goals. But in reality, I've found quite the opposite. The closer I am with a healthy network of people, the closer I am and the more successfully and the more seamlessly I'm able to accomplish those goals. So that's what I'm working on, and that's really helped me. But the requirement in that is twofold. One, um, open and honest communication with that network, and then creating that network of healthy relationships. Because a lot of people do have relationships that keep them in their old habits, old patterns. But yeah, it's really important to focus on those relationships, especially as a high performer who tends to be more of a lone wolf or singleton operator.
And do you feel that that work that you're doing, or the work that you've already done, bleeds into how you network with other people in your career field and your in the startup space, in life in general? I know you know you're not out searching for a job or on LinkedIn or anything like that, looking
Yeah,
for for jobs that are available, but
right.
um, we feel like networking is important, and I'm just curious your take on it and how that perspective with your friends and family kind of bleeds over into networking and even mentorship, as you mentioned. You have reached out to a mentor, but those come
Yeah.
through networking, right?
Yeah, it all does. Everything does. Everything's relationships, right? Whether you believe that AI is going to take over the world in a year or not, everything is people right now, and is and likely always will be. Um, but yeah, the quality of your relationships up and down, mentors, and I would not be anywhere if without a fantastic set of mentors. And what you'll find is I truly believe that the strongest thing you can do is find people who are better than you at things, and then ask them about the things that they're better than you at, and then take their advice, right? And I've done the same thing in hiring. I do the same thing in finding mentors. I have no problem not being the best at stuff. My only discernible skill, I joke a lot, is that I find people who are better than me at things, and then get them to work together on a common goal. And that's really all that the company is. That's all that I did during my career, And if I've had any success at all or have a talent at all, it's really been that. And I would encourage people to do that. Find people who know more than you, find people who are better than you, faster than you, stronger than you, and surround yourself with those people because they bring out the best in you, right? And don't be afraid to connect with those people in a vulnerable way and let them know what you don't know, right? It's only going to make you better. Um, and from mental health to physical performance to performance in business and everything else, wouldn't be where I am if I didn't surround myself with people who are better than me constantly. And it's really helpful. I've found that it's the same thing in my friend groups and professional groups. Um, that connecting yourself with people is a shortcut to success in any field. Whether you're just trying to get better at your personal relationships, that's going to happen if you connect with people authentically. Same thing professionally, and in any other field. I truly believe that connection is everything. So if you find yourself feeling isolated, try to fight that urge because it's probably slowing you down getting wherever you're going.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm curious to know, like, other than LinkedIn, um, what exactly, other than LinkedIn, what kind of approach do you take to networking? And of course, it's going to be different because you're speaking from a startup space in a big startup locality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be different for everybody, but I'm curious to know your approach as far as when you go out and actually network with people, or you go out and interact
Yeah,
with people socially, and then potentially, making connections with people as friends or business
yeah,
partners or
yeah.
advisors or anything like that. What is your approach to that?
Oh, my approach to that is just authenticity above everything else, right? Truvana is a startup. We're just getting started, right? I just retired. The team is new at every facet of business, right? I'm really good at special operations, sensitive activities, war, right? An expert in business, brand new. And what you'll find is that when you communicate that, people who aren't brand new, people who are experts, are more than happy to help you, to provide value if um, they are happy to provide, you know, help or value if um, you're authentic about where you are and the value that you can provide, even if that value is very little or nothing today, right? The value of you as a startup, or you as a new entrepreneur, or you when you're trying to network or even looking for a job is that authenticity and your um, like potential, right? People really value that. And what I've found just succinctly is that people are willing to help if they've already accomplished what you're trying to accomplish, right? And that's in any capacity. So talk to those people, and they don't seek to sell your value. You likely aren't valuable to them today, and that's okay, right? If you create an authentic relationship, then that will progress your ability to provide value more than anything else, right? You don't know how to be valuable to most people who are already successful, right? You don't, very likely, if you're transitioning out of the military, yet, but you will learn it and you keep working. So just be your authentic self, right? Be your authentic self. It will take you much farther than trying to sell yourself or having the most attractive resume or any of that, right? Be a hard worker, be authentic, be genuine, be consistent. Those are the things that matter more than anything. It'll take you farther, in my experience, than anything else does.
So let's jump into your experience with the transition office, with transition. I
Yeah.
think you're the second special operations guy that I've interviewed. The first one did not retire. He was only in for, I think, 13 or 14 years.
Okay.
But he still went through transition and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about your transition, especially with it's a med board, correct?
Yeah, and I did that at 13 years to the month.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I did the med board process. It's pretty well defined. Pretty The hardest thing about the med board that's different than just an ETS, right, or just a normal separation, even if it's a retirement, is the unpredictable timeline because you're depending on the Army Medical Board and then the VA, right, to provide ratings and to schedule appointments. So it's very unpredictable, and it could go really fast. There's portions that lag behind. If you do it during certain times of the year, there's just more volume, so it takes longer. Um, which is why it's so important as soon as you know that you're headed towards retirement or that that's an option, that you start to focus on what's next as soon as you know, because it could be 3 months, 6 months, or 18 months until you are out of the military. And the other thing that's difficult about the med board is you don't know what your rating will be, and therefore don't know what sort of benefits or compensation you'll have until it's kind of like over, right? Until you're about 3 months from exit, you don't know if you're going to be 100% retired, or if you're going to be 0%, right? So you really need to, as soon as you know, start looking at, start networking, start talking to people, start listening to podcasts like this and information like this, because um, the sooner you start, the more options you'll have, and the more time you'll have to process what's next, right? Um, and the sooner you start to process what's next, the healthier your timeline to process what has happened already. And you want to try to do both of those at the same time, but that's a big ask on yourself. So as soon as you know that you're transitioning, man, start to focus on what's next. That's the biggest advice I can give. My process was pretty easy. Started the med board, not not that hard. You go to appointments, you schedule appointments. You just kind of go through and check the boxes. They give you a really comprehensive roadmap of things that you have to do, kind of milestones, and then you just go through that process, right? You just check those boxes, get your ratings, and then you provide that paperwork to the next process. It's pretty simple. Um, the hardest part about it is just the ambiguous timeline, right? Something could be a month, something could be 3 months, and you're just wait and see. And that would have been a lot more stressful without my chain of command support. Um, I cannot say that enough. Is just communicating with your chain of command openly, honestly, authentically, because in a med board, you don't have the same opportunities that you do when you're separating, right? You can't do an internship while you're doing a med board like you can when you're separating, because the timeline is ambiguous. And so you don't have the same kind of opportunities or the same scaffolding for what comes next as you do in a normal transition. You'll still do TAP, right? The Transition Assistance Program, which helps you do things like build a resume and some of those, box check items that are necessary. But there's nothing as valuable as learning what you want to do next and taking the time to process not what you feel like you have to do, but authentically what you want to do. That's a huge value of taking the time, is because a lot of people transition, they go to a master's program or they get out and they try to find a job that backfills the pay that they're losing in the DoD. Those jobs won't necessarily, or those opportunities won't necessarily provide you fulfillment. And so I would say, don't chase what you feel like you have to do, nor should you chase, um, just money on that first transition. Try to set yourself up to go into what you want to do authentically. What's going to be the most fulfilling thing you could do with the next portion of your life? And then backfill that with what career helps you achieve that, right? What helps you meet those goals. That's what I would focus on. That's what I focused on. And that's how I ended up here with a really great team of people that I knew, people that I worked with, other special operations guys, um, good, close, quality friends of mine. And we built this company from scratch. And it couldn't be more fulfilling, right? Good days and bad days, and there are great days and the worst days. Um, wouldn't do it with anybody else, and that's what I would suggest people do.
As far as the tap process goes itself, was there anything that stuck out that maybe, because I know it's, I'll say it if nobody else says it, but everybody else says it. It's literally a fire hose of information. It's literally a week and some change of really just nonstop seminars and nonstop briefings and PowerPoint deaf. Is there anything in that whole process that you gleaned that maybe stood out that you weren't expecting, that kind of jumped out at you and was like, oh, wow, this is actually some really helpful information?
Yeah, so full disclosure, like I skipped tap, um, and just convinced the lady the last day to sign off on the paperwork, because one of the guys I was transitioning with, a good buddy of mine, skipped tap. I would not recommend that. Don't do that. They probably won't let you get away with it. You got to be really convincing. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I wouldn't chance it. Um, but yeah, that was his feedback. He was like, it's a lot of information, it's a lot of box checking. They help you with resume, but it's class after class after class in kind of a non-digestible way. Um, I would say the thing that I got the most value out of during that time as a replacement was taking that time to network and set up LinkedIn and reach out to people who were in fields or doing things that I thought were interesting or valuable, um, and then just asking them, to have a conversation about what they did when they were in my shoes. This is not new. Transitioning out of the military, I think about 200 to 300,000 people do it every single year, right? This is not a new thing. So, yeah, I would say just you should do tap. There's a lot of information in it, so I'm told. But I would say that on top of that, right, don't trust tap to set you up for success. It's your responsibility to set yourself up for success. And tap is a week, right? Tap is consolidated into a week. Take the last year because it takes a lot longer. Like I'm saying, you want to build authentic relationships with people. That has never happened in a week. Take time to introduce yourself to people who are where you want to go, who are where you want to be, and then build a relationship on, you know, with those people as either a mentor mentee relationship or friends, um, and just start there because it's really up to you to ensure that you're successful transitioning out. The military sets up things to make sure that they help, they provide the value that they can. Certainly go through it. I would not recommend that people skip it like I did. But I would say, the value of um, TAP is giving you a week to focus um, on building those relationships or setting up those systems. So start that as soon as you can. Don't rely on the military to launch you into a successful post-military career.
Yeah, it's funny that you that you didn't go through the tap prats. Very entrepreneurial of you to not do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. You, yeah. I would not recommend it because you can't get out of the military without the like SFL TAP certificate. So like you need that's a thing. Nobody can get out of the military without that like transition assistance program stamp. Um, yeah, like you can't really fake it because it's digital. So you either gotta convince the military to let you get away with it. I would not recommend that you try that.
Yeah, we wouldn't recommend it either, and I would actually recommend if you can do it twice or even three times,
Yeah,
it'd probably
yeah.
be a better option because
Yeah, the
you're going to be
information
repeating
is
this stuff.
great. The information is great, so I'm told. It's just too consolidated. They put it close to when you're out. It needs to be spread out and well ahead of your separation date. That's the only difference is that focus on it over a longer period of time because it takes more than 1 week to set yourself up for success, right?
Yeah.
Think about it like basic training is longer than a week. And then even when you graduate, right, basic training, just simply put, then you go to your unit and you realize you don't actually know anything yet. You still have to learn it. It takes time to set yourself up for success anywhere, no matter what you're doing. So take the time to do that, right? And I would say that understanding what people look for in a resume, understanding the value of translating your military work into civilian jargon or kind of corporate speak is really valuable. And if you need help with that, like, message me or anybody at the company. We'd be happy to take a look at that. Because it does matter. And they are two different sets of vernacular, two different sets of jargon. And it's really important to be able to communicate what you did effectively in your, new environment.
Yeah, it's 100% right. I'm curious, actually, if just out of my own pure curiosity, how much value or how much weight do you put on an actual resume whenever you're trying to hire, say, a new employee or a new batch of employees?
It's it is your first impression, most places. So I would say that your resume, yeah, it's your first impression. You get a lot of chances to make impressions, but your resume is your first opportunity to show who you are. So I would say it's important. Um, yeah, I would say it's pretty important. It's not anywhere near as important as a good first interview. It's not anywhere near as important as good interpersonal communications, but it is how you set yourself apart. I think last time we did a round of hiring, we got something. I had to review something like 1,400 resumes over like a week long period. We didn't end up hiring anybody during that time, because in looking at the resumes, there wasn't an exact fit, and it's not because everyone's resume is flawed. We didn't have it was both too broad and too specific a job at the time. We ended up waiting to bring somebody on later, but um, yeah, I would say your resume is your first impression, but it's not the last impression. So you want to be professional, you want to be clear, you want to be precise. It is your way of introducing yourself to a company. But it certainly isn't the end all be all. But think of it like, your introduction. What do you want people to know about you, and how do you want people to perceive you? But resumes are important, and there are best practices, and just like anything else, right, there are new or antiquated terms, new or antiquated ways of doing things. So by using an older system, you date yourself and might not seem as relevant, or you might not seem like you care just based on not knowing the most up-to-date resume, um, kind of setup or standards. I would say two resources that are helpful is AI and resumes, and then also create your resume in a system like Canva. I think that even Google has resume templates. Right, you go to Google, you go to Docs, you click New, you click Templates, pull up templates, click Resume. Use the template for your resume, then have Chat GPT review that resume, and then give it the prompt of, this company is the company for which I'm applying. Please review this resume, understanding that this company is the company to which I'm applying, and provide me feedback. Make those updates, and then just sharpen it from there. But yeah, it is important. But if anybody needs help with that, we'd be happy to take a look at it and provide pointers or feedback, especially for people transitioning out. But for really anybody, we're here to help.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. So I feel kind of blessed because I get to interview somebody who's the CEO of a company, a startup company at that, coming straight from the military, straight into that. And so I kind of want to throw a little bit of a left hook out there as a question. This question is actually something that Peter Thiel asks people when he interviews people.
Sure.
Sometimes, and so I found it kind of appropriate and a little bit off the beating path of what we normally do. But I just want to ask you, what problems do you face every day, or what problems you faced in the past every day that nobody has solved yet?
Yeah. So I'd say the number one problem that we face as a company, right, and I say it like a company because I don't have any problems currently that are novel, that are bigger than or worth discussing more than the problem that the company's trying to face. And I don't think it's even that novel, but the one that gives everybody in the company the most grief is making sure that we can provide an outstanding level of customer care and support, and just relentless uh, pursuit of quality and support for our clients while running a business focused on growth and focused on a national market, as a startup, right? With very few resources, those things are very difficult to align. But part of the core mission of Truvana, right? And I would say that is the hardest duality of a company that focuses on customer service as a new business, or even as an operating business. It is, I think that Jeff Bezos says it pretty well in that, a lot of companies focus on what's going to change, what direction are things headed in, where should we be in 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 5 years, right? But it's easier for people to focus on what won't change. Not that that makes the process of providing excellent customer service with limited resources easy, but it gives you a north star or a waypoint that's a bit truer, right? What won't change? We know that um, people are going to need support with finding a house in a place that they haven't been. We know that they're going to have questions. We know that they're going to want discounts, and we know that they're going to have um, a tight timeline, in order to get this PCS done. Those things likely aren't changing. So if we can focus on easing those pain points, um, then we're doing okay. We can't fix everything today, right? We can't fix everything today, and we certainly won't exist tomorrow if we try. So our current focus is just, and it's the same thing personally, right? I've got, you know, a lot of things that I work on personally. The company has a lot of things to work on. I've got from fitness goals to emotional health goals to company metrics, objectives, key results, and KPIs that I want to meet, personally, professionally. But I can't fix it all today. So focusing on the things that matter, measuring what matters, and then focusing on it is the best that we can do. Um, but yeah, I would say that's the thing that keeps us up at night. It would be easy to create a system that only benefits the businesses, that we connect our service members to. There's a playbook for that. It's pretty simple in these referral networks that exist. The hard part is creating a system that clients want to be a part of, that service members want to be a part of. Creating a system that provides so much value to the service members that they wouldn't go anywhere else, to get their relocation done. They wouldn't go anywhere else to move their household goods. They wouldn't trust anybody else to provide them rental options or housing options, buyer options, refinance options, property management options. So we negotiate on their behalf and try to make Truvana as valuable as we can for the clients. And that is a very difficult thing to do as a starting business, but it matters a lot to every single person on the team. So that's the thing that constantly brings us back to reality, is making sure that we stay focused on being an excellent customer service company.
That's an excellent answer.
Yeah.
Really good answer. And
Okay.
I feel like it's nice to be able to step outside of the boundaries a little bit sometimes, and I think it's a good way to go. I definitely want to step outside of the boundaries with this next question, and we're
Sure.
going to step completely outside of the entrepreneurial mindset or business
Sure.
mindset. I want to do a hypothetical kind of walkthrough with you, and what I
Mhm.
want to do is I want to put you in a place and time where you would meet up with your 16-year-old self, and not necessarily to go back and give advice or to change the course of the future in some way or shape, but just to sit down and have a conversation. If you could just give us like where that would happen, if that would be happening in Ohio, in your hometown, and what would that conversation sort of look like?
Sure. Yeah. 16-year-old me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, First, I think it's important to qualify the conversation that present me. Yeah, I'd have probably had to beat 16-year-old me's ass. We probably would have fought, right? I would have had to beat it because I wasn't listening to anybody um, at 16. So first things first is just sit 16-year-old me down and explain just I think priorities, all the things that we've talked about already um, are important. I was a high performer only in what I cared about, and that kind of created a some traits that represent today as it could be, like selfishness, right? I tend to deprioritize even my own needs, sleep, right, recovery, all in the name of succeeding in what I care about, right? The difference between fixation and focus. I would say setting priorities and accomplishing those with focus is the healthy version of setting priorities that require you to deprioritize everything else, self included, in order to accomplish them. And that I would try to have a focus for 16-year-old me, or provide the advice that and this is just a me thing, but being able to balance that line of hyper focus over fixation would have or will, provide a higher quality of life with less damage as it relates to turmoil in relationships, um, stress, strain, right? All of the whoop metrics, and everything else is the number one thing I would provide, right? I'm not a big work life balance guy. I'm more of a work life harmony guy these days. I think excellence happens at the extremes, but balancing determination or a goal oriented person, having them understand that setting goals and focusing on accomplishing those goals, measuring what will matter in accomplishing those goals, and then focusing on each of those benchmarks. That's success. Whereas fixation, um, being focusing on that same end result and doing whatever it takes, deprioritizing everything else, is if you can balance that better than I did from 16 to 30, I think I'd be uh, already in the spot that I'm getting to in terms of both mental health and relationships and everything else. But that's the number one thing when you're young and a high performer, looking at living in a way that is sustainable, versus burning the candle at both ends and chopping it up in the middle. It'll give you a much longer runway for whatever you're doing. But yeah, that's what I would tell 16-year-old me. But again, 16-year-old me isn't listening to anybody, so I'm gonna have to beat his ass first, and that's fine.
Well, I'm curious now that you said that you weren't listening to anybody. There had to be one person that you were listening to. Is that do you remember if there was one actual person that you were actually listening to when you were
Yeah,
16?
I listen to people. I have a ton of respect for my parents. I listen to pretty much anything they say. My dad's a huge role model of mine. Um, he called twice while we were on this podcast. We talk all the time. Yeah, no, a huge fan. And no, I listen to them, but they let me process growing up. And they did that in a safe environment and allowed me to develop into who I was going to be without structuring who they thought I should be, or what they thought I should be doing. Right. Everybody in my family is in education or arts. Right. And I was headed that route, and then went the route of war and violence, which suited me better. Um, it allowed me to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do had I followed, pre-med and then a medical degree and then continued in that route. So, um, I listened to them, but I wasn't taking, when I say listen, um, I didn't really have any role models. That's not necessarily true. I guess the best way to say it is there wasn't anybody at that time really like telling me what to do or how to do it. I just had a lot of inspirational people in my life, family members who had made a plan and executed it. So performance became really important to me. And I think that that's what shaped my obsession in accomplishing. I have a very accomplished family. Everybody's awesome. I love them all to death. They're all superheroes to me. Um, but I do think it's important with high performance people to make sure that high performance doesn't come at such a cost. And that's really the only thing. Um, is that they taught me how to go and how to be successful and how to try to be a good person and balance all that. But they didn't teach me how to have breaks, right? They didn't teach me how to, or that's really the only difference, right? Not so much they didn't teach me to do it or not teach me. It's just that wasn't the focus. They supported me in accomplishing, and so accomplishing became what I did, and that was my default. So yeah, that's what I would tell 16-year-old me, because I think that's the only thing that I was that would make a substantive difference on how I executed the last 10 years professionally.
I'm going to go ahead and give you back your time. You've been really gracious, and I know normally these conversations go on for hours and hours at some point, and that's very well and good as well. But I know you got a lot of things going on, so I just want to kind of put a bookend on this conversation and
Sure.
put you again in sort of a hypothetical, but it could be a very realistic thing if you ever decided you wanted to go like on the base and jump into a tap class for 30 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and give a talk, which
Yeah.
I would highly recommend if that's an option for you.
Sure.
Um, if you could sit down with a group of military members who are going through TAP and say you get say you get like the keynote to the TAP, and they give you, 18, 20, 25 minutes to talk, what would that pseudo TED talk look like? Like, what would the thesis of that talk be?
Yeah. Um, yeah. So the thesis, I think it starts at the military has a lot of breadth. Um, and understanding that is really, really important. I think the first thing I would do is if it's right 20, 25 minutes, the first thing is just compartmentalizing the conversation into who's in the room. Right? A lot of people see previous military person. If they're outside the military, they hear military experience, they have a preconceived notion or some preconceived notions about what that person's capable of, their previous experience, right? But that's not homogenous. Um, it has a lot of breadth. You have people who, are the highest performing from their graduating class in Ivy League school, all the way to people who barely graduated high school. You have people who did 25 years and then people who did 2 years, 1 year, and are transitioning out. So, one thing that the military does really well is it creates one size fits all solutions for an organization with that much breadth and that much scope and that set of problems that they have to solve. It does that better than any organization I've seen. But that's not where you're headed once you're transitioning out. It's specialization time. It's time to focus up. So I would kind of break the group into what's relevant for them, right? If you're a high performing person, when I say high performing person, all I mean is it's probably a misnomer. If you have more experience in management and leadership and education, or have been presented more educational opportunities or executed more educational opportunities during your tenure in the military, there's a set of information that's relevant to you. There's a set of information that's relevant to um, people who didn't have those opportunities or didn't take those opportunities. So not everybody is leaving the military at the same trajectory. And I would start there, right? In the first 5 minutes, breaking it into groups of, okay, who did secondary education or some collegiate education or additional training during your time in the military? Okay, great. Who came into the military with college experience? Okay, great. Who doesn't have college experience or additional training from the military? Great. We can break it down into those three groups. Now, the base group with no additional training or leadership experience or higher education, there's a set of information that's valuable for them. Here are your additional education opportunities. I would start there. You're not finished with personal development. Continue to do for the next 2 years personal development before you transition into the corporate world, into the private sector, or follow a list of resources that allow you to further gain professional experience, right, in a trade, um, so that you can finish your personal experience, right? That would be my suggestion for that first group, and then providing them a set of resources both through the Department of Defense and the Army, in my case, and then same thing outside. And then the middle group of people with project management experience, leadership experience, potentially higher education opportunities that they've taken during their tenure. Those are people who are poised for mid to higher mid-level jobs in corporate America. And the most important thing is going to be transitioning or translating the value of their military leadership and experience into that vernacular and corporate speak, right? Nobody knows what it means to be a platoon sergeant. Not nobody, but a lot of people won't understand was a platoon sergeant. They don't understand what the scope of those responsibilities are, right? When you're transitioning out. So you don't want to say, chief operations officer, try to just, those mean very different things. But saying that you have experience in managing personnel, in managing funds, in accountability, in project management, in counseling and development, in um, you know relaying a strategy into a plan and then overseeing the execution of that plan. Extremely valuable for that middle set of people. And then you've got people with a college education who came into the military, whether they enlisted or became officers. And to those people, networking is going to be the most valuable thing that they can do because they already have the same requirements or criteria as peers exiting college or higher education. The major difference is that they now have leadership experience on top of that higher education. So translating that and then connecting them with job opportunities and with market opportunities for jobs in corporate America at an executive level, or senior level, is definitely viable for them if they can translate that experience. So that's the number one thing that I would do. That's how I'd spend the time in a TAP environment, is just explaining to them that they aren't all on the same trajectory, that they have different opportunities, and that they're not fixed on what I'm outlining, right? This is some information. We call it a tool, goes on your tool belt. Use it, don't use it. It's not applicable in every situation, but hopefully for them, it helps them understand next steps. Next steps are dependent on who you are and where you are in your professional journey. And that's how I would spend kind of a 20-minute time and breaking it into three groups. There's some common to all information, but more relevantly, there's some information based on who you are and your experience. Then I would break that up and then probably set up a time to follow up with each of those groups afterwards, to help them execute on what we went over. Because that's one of the things the DoD doesn't do great in transition, is they provide you information, then it's your responsibility to execute. Sometimes people need a little bit of a helping hand from information to execution. That's what we kind of help with too. So yeah, that's how I'd spend it. That'd be my suggestion for anybody doing a engagement with some people in TAP, is to understand who they're talking to first, because it'll help inform the advice that they give. And that's critical.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned about the giving them the tools. And I mean, what you just said, like it may or may not be applicable. You may be able to figure out how to use that tool or not use that tool, because it's not
Right.
necessarily they give you the tools and the instructions, right? A lot of
Right.
times you get the tools without the instructions.
Right. Yeah.
But there's also some off-brand usage for some of those tools as well, right? You can use a
Certainly.
screwdriver for many different things.
Certainly.
Um, so just maybe that is kind of like an add-on. My 2 cents on it.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about your company and Truvana, and it's another reason why I wanted you to be on the show as well, is because this is a resource for military people who are
Sure. Yeah.
not just transitioning out of the military, but if you're PCSing, if you're trying to figure out how to manage your 3 homes that you left behind at your last 3 duty stations, and you don't have a
Yeah.
good property manager, and you just end up like me selling the place because you just couldn't
Mm,
find anybody who was worth a damn to manage the property. So
absolutely.
I wish we would have bumped into each other a year ago, and maybe circumstances would have been different, but it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely want to just hear your side of what you do, how you help veterans, what kind of resources do you provide for them, and
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. So, and thanks for the opportunity to do that. So
absolutely.
yeah, Truvana is a relocation marketplace. We connect service members to the products and services that they need when they're PCSing. That's the elevator pitch. But the reality is that what we are trying to do is take the frequent and disjointed moves that people have to do every 3 years and make it easier. Not just make it easier, but capitalize on the opportunity for service members to build wealth during their time in service. So, one of the biggest values of working with a company like Truvana is, well, we can help pack up your household goods, ship it anywhere in the world. We will coordinate with your household goods so that it falls in line with your housing requirements. Chances are, on your departing end, you got to pack up household goods and either close an apartment or sell a house or manage it. So we can do that. And you might want to refinance it and then have your property managed. In your case, we have a fantastic property management partner. And if they can't help you, we have property management partners at the local level. But our national property management partner is called Belong, and they provide an outstanding service. And we call it deployment proof property management. And what we mean by that is that they'll handle everything from start to finish, and they'll do it at a flat rate. So, they'll any maintenance calls from tenant placement to making sure that, when there's a plumbing issue, you're not needing to handle it. They handle everything. The only thing that you have to deal with is collecting a check every month for the rent that gets paid to your property. And the benefit of that is that, my co-founder and I did that a few times throughout our career and just bought a property, moved somewhere else, bought another property. And by the end of your military career, you have a portfolio that's worth millions of dollars. And you're able to do that by working with us to purchase a property at your arriving duty station, live in that property. Then when you PCS, we'll manage that property for you. And then we'll use 70% of the revenue projection from that property to help you buy another property at your arriving PCS. We'll ship your household goods to your new location, and then you can rinse and repeat that cycle. And by the time it's time to make a decision on ETS or retirement or any other decisions you have to make throughout your career, you have something that you've built, that you own, that's supported by these opportunities, quite frankly, although they can be painful, they can be frustrating, can be scary, quite frankly, to move from a place that you've been to a place that you've never been. There's opportunities in that pain, in that frustration, and that's what Truvana can help you with. So that's really what we do, and it's individualized to each service member. Some service members don't have the credit to buy a house, so we can help you find a rental. You can rent for a while. We'll help you work on your credit. When it is time to buy, we'll help you work with a lender, help you work with an agent, and get you in a house. Right? We've had E1s buy their first property in the Pacific Northwest for upwards of $400,000, and they were started as a rental with us. So it's never too early. But if you're looking for opportunities to either build wealth or just make your PCS easier, that's what we're here for. And that's why we built this company. We help employ service members. We help transition service members, everything from resume assistance to anything else. We're really here to help service member life become easier. We're focused on this thing that we all understand in PCS, which is a pretty painful process because everybody's going to go through it at least once. But we're really here to become the first service member support network. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And if
Mm-hmm.
I could just for a second dive into like a little bit of the details
Sure.
for those out there who are thinking about it or considering it, I think this would be a
Yeah.
question that I would ask if I was to onboard a property manager in any situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there a level of setting the property at a baseline standard of the property for that market in that process of coming on as a property manager, going in? And I guess what I'm saying is, if there's any updates that need to be done to the house or anything like that, is there any kind of like baseline level that they say this is where it should be in order for you to
Yeah.
make 2% at the door or 3% at the door on the profit margin end?
Sure. And that's one of the benefits of working with us is that our property management partners will do all that for you. Because it depends so greatly market to market that what you want to do is just ask and get an assessment that costs nothing. So even if it's something you're curious about, I would give us a call and look at it. Right, golden standard. Just generally speaking, if you want to be able to, I call it napkin math. I think everybody does. Is really looking at if the rent for your property, right? If you were to rent it as a single family home, and I just use Rentometer anytime I'm looking at comparable rents, and I look at the percentile that the property falls into. Um, but if the rent for your property is 1% of the total value of the property, right? So, for example, if the house values $100,000, then every month, as long as it rents at $1,000 per month, then that house is probably good to keep and have managed as a property. But it varies so greatly market to market. It matters what your rate is. It matters what your mortgage payment is, which is a factor of how much you put down on the property, right? And then your APR. So all of it really, really, really matters. So much nuance to it that I would suggest that if you don't want to become an expert in it, which I'm happy to provide education and tools on, but just reach out to us and we'll connect you with a property manager who will do a free assessment and tell you, hey, I think that you should update the roof, right? Or I think that if you threw paint on it, you might increase your margin or the rentability of your property. But at the end of the day, the thing that you want to start with, and I always tell people this, is your options. So, whether you're doing a Diddy move or whether you're having the army move your household goods, getting an assessment to see what it would cost for Truvana to move your household goods is completely free. So at least get your options. Same thing with property management. Same thing with finding out if you should sell. Same thing with finding out if you should buy or what you get pre-qualified for. We don't charge for any of that. We don't charge anything to service members who we're supporting for these transactions. And the way that we work is we don't get paid unless there's a successful transaction on the back end, and we help support those from start to finish. So I would say, gold standard is that 1% rule. If the monthly rent on your apartment is equal to 1% of the property value, again, just simple math, $1,000 per month in rent. If the property is $100,000 for the asking price or the property value, generally will be a rentable property. But there's so much nuance to it that I would ask our partners, and they're the best in the business. I've never seen a better property management company than Belong, and they're partnered with us, and they operate in most of the bases that we operate in. But where they don't have coverage, we'll find you a property manager, and we'll walk you through the entire process. And that's what we're there for, is to help fill in the gaps between what you need but may not understand, and what our network provides and the gaps that we have. So that's what we're here for.
That's awesome, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
real estate is it's a funny little game that you play
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Yeah.
I've definitely dove down that rabbit hole a few times and
Mhm.
learned as much as I could through mentorship, through networking as
Yeah.
well, and
Yeah.
also just trying to do stuff with my own kind of properties. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, here I am, not in America. So
Yeah. And that's the thing, man, is it's unpredictable. But what you want is options, you know. What you want is flexibility, and what you want is to not be locked down. You want assets, not liabilities. So at the end of the day, unless you want to learn everything about real estate investing, which we'd be happy to teach you. And if there's a thing that we don't know, and there's plenty that we don't know, we'll connect you to people who do, and some of the best in the business. Truly, we've got the best partners and some of the biggest partners in everything from VA lending to household goods, logistics to property management. Um, we've truly focused on building this network of service member advocacy, and I haven't seen any partners provide a better offering than ours do. So as we start to grow and introduce more service members to those opportunities, the number one thing we want to provide is value to the service member. And I'm confident that we do that better than anybody else, for sure.
yeah, it's awesome. So let's just see if there's anything that we haven't covered, that we haven't discussed, that maybe we glazed over, that maybe you want to go a little bit deeper on, or if you're good, I'm good. But I'll give you the opportunity for that as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think we've covered everything. I'm happy with where it's at, and I appreciate the time and the opportunity to discuss it. And happy to see where it goes and continue to have more conversations in the future, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you could just give us, we'll have it in the show notes, of course, but if you could just give us on the air for those listening who want to write it down, or if you're watching, maybe screenshot it,
Sure.
where they can find you, where they can reach out, where's the best places to look you up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So any service member who needs support on relocation, or if they just want to buy a house or have their property managed, or any of the other services that go along with PCS, whether you're moving or not, you can check us out at truvana.com, TRUEVANA.com, or follow us on Facebook, .com/Truvana, Instagram. Um, Truvana is our handle across everything. So check us out. Um, or hit us up at hello@truvana.com. Just ask us any general questions that you have. We're happy to answer them. Whether it's about one of our core services or transitioning like this, we're happy to answer questions for service members all day.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I appreciate you, Mike, for coming on, spending your time with me again. It's a very gracious thing for people to do, and I know it's a very big ask, especially for the amount of time that I interview for. So, but yeah, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and hopefully, those of you out in the audience got something from this, whether you're listening or watching. If you need to reach out to Mike and Truvana and find out what you need to do. And hopefully there's some big nuggets in this conversation that you can go look at and see what's going on.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you. Anytime you want to come back on, just let me know and hit me up, and we'll make that happen.
We'll do. Thanks, John.
For those of you out in the audience listening, watching, paying attention, be sure to check us out wherever we are. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're all over the place. We're finding new partners every day. You can find us on Rees Across America Network twice a day on Wednesdays evenings, and then early morning. I think it's like 4 or 5 a.m. depending on where you're at. So you can check us out there. Be sure to support us if you can, and that means just watching and paying attention, listening, giving us feedback through comments and through emails and suggestions. Check out our Facebook group on Facebook. It's the Military Retirement Group. You just have to request to get in. And also, just to let you know, at the time of this recording, we should have the guide out that we're trying to put out. So that should be coming your way very, very soon. If you haven't seen it yet, and if you need a copy of it, just let us know and we'll get it to you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Mike. And hope everybody has a great day.
Take care, John.
All right. Thanks.